Hey y'all, Happy New Year. Here's hoping 2021 might turn out a little bit better than 2020. I haven't done one for a while here now, so I thought it was maybe time. Got a little bit of snow to move. Normally the first few times, if it's just a little bit, I don't even bother moving it. I like to pack it down just so I get a nice ice base so I don't really dig up the yard. Or in our front yard here, we got 3/4 inch rock over the whole thing, and I don't like to relocate it out onto the lawn, and I gotta sit and rake it out. Or, you know, I normally like to shove everything out back and I don't want to waste all our stone out back in the mud. So, well, here we go. Behind me, you can kind of see is my Terex 55C payloader. It's German built. Hannemag out of Germany actually built this machine. It's I think a 3.5 yard bucket, and it has a non-turbo diesel. I mean, this thing is massive. I want to say it's like 580 cubic inches, 144 horse, and like I say, no turbo. So I'm assuming that has to be why it's just ridiculously huge. You know, typical German or European built machine, 24 volt electrical system, which is the one thing I don't really care for. But it works. When I got the machine, the guy I bought it from said he bought it from like a rock quarry, and they had just overhauled the engine like a year or so before he even bought it. They ended up overhauling it, decided to not really use it apparently. You know, I didn't have any paperwork to prove it, but a couple of times that first winter I had it when it was like 15-20 degrees, I thought, well, let's, instead of plugging it in, let's try and run it. And lo and behold, I mean, it started. So, I mean, I'd say, rough guess, it's got to be pretty fresh. It's an older machine. It's got some leaks. It's got some play. When I first got it, I had to repack the tilt cylinder. When you'd use it, you could watch the hydraulic oil just pour out of the front. So I had to fill it up quite a bit. And, you know, the tires ain't the greatest. I could really use some newer ones, but for now it works. I don't really use it a whole lot, so unfortunately it's hard to justify this big machine for how little I use it, but at the same time, I shouldn't have to fix it a lot if I don't use it a lot. So, well, I got her, it's been plugged in for a few days now. Just put my batteries back in it and dump some #1 fuel in there. Let's crank her up and get her warmed up and move some snow. Been having some difficulty with it lately. I don't know if I got something going on with the key wiring or really what it is. So I have to start it with a screwdriver. The first while that I had it, I always had to start it with a screwdriver because something was messed up and I had it fixed. But then now, this past summer, it sat for a while and whatnot, and then the batteries were dead, and now it's always just giving me grief that it don't always go with the key. Sometimes it does if I mess with it a while, but sometimes it's just easier to use the screwdriver and be done with it. So I couldn't get the payloader started. The last few times I used it, the starter would crank pretty slow, and I just figured maybe it was time for new batteries or something. They're barely 2 years old, but well, actually almost 3 years old, I suppose. But I don't know. I pulled the starter out, and this tin cover here just you know, sits on the end like that, keeps it all covered and sealed with elements. You know, I pulled that off. You probably can't see it the best. There's junk in the bottom, and it just stinks like burnt windings. Probably can't see it the greatest, but where the magnets ride in there doesn't look too pretty, and there's a couple of spots where you can tell it was like starting to weld itself in there. And I even brought my batteries in. I set them up. I hooked up the starter, and I could barely get it to even work that way. I had to grab the end here, just turn it ever so slightly, and then try again. And it the couple of times it did work. I mean, this thing I would think should be able to toss me across the floor, and just with my foot standing on it, it barely wiggled, and you could hear that it wasn't spinning very fast. So she's junk. We'll have to just use the little guy for moving snow today, which it's warm out, it won't be so bad. Well, that's about all the snow I'm going to move. I don't want to get just too carried away. There's quite a bit more that needs to be done, and that's how I did it. It's normally not how I do it anyhow, but it would just take forever with the skid loader versus using a payloader. But obviously we'll get a starter ordered up for it, and you know, don't worry, you'll see it in action in a future video, I'm sure. You know, winter's not over yet. But it is quite something. Size difference between the two. You know, the skid loader is just a little Gehl. What is it, a 1.3 liter 4-cylinder Ford? Like a third, I think the bucket's like a third yard or a half yard, I can't remember. But normally what I do is I do the majority of it with the payloader, and then I get the skid loader out and then do the corners, the small stuff, and then I go back through with the payloader and clean everything up. But hopefully you all had a good New Year's Eve, and stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time.